Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Blecker, and today I am addressing you, our Utah legislators, to discuss the issue of the bill that has been put forth before us, the potential for banning abortions here in Utah. Now, this issue was first addressed in 2022, bringing to the stand of banning abortions completely after the overturning of Roe versus Wade in 2022. Now, that is thankfully hasn't been put into play, and abortions are still available up to 18 weeks here in Utah. The problem that we are facing today is not only a women's rights issue, it's their body, their choice. I will state that throughout most of my argument here, but with that, we need to understand why women are asking for the abortions, why they are doing this. What can we do to help understand why this is happening in this sense? My role right now is I want to tell you what is happening with this. Since the overturning of Roe versus Wade, there have been 12 states that have completely banned abortion in the United States. With that, what's happening is that women are driving to other states to have this procedure done. They are looking to others or potentially very harmful issues that are not legal per se, but they're looking for methods to have abortions or unsafe procedures that can put them in harm's way, not only for their remainder of their reproductive rights, but for, well, themselves to potentially pass away from procedures that they're not capable of doing. Really, we need to discuss why they're doing this. A big one, unfortunately, it's something that's very hard to talk about, is rape. Women, unfortunately, are assaulted, and sometimes that results in an unwanted pregnancy. With that, that's one of the leading causes for abortion, is they can't hold that one. We need to understand that there are the issues standing right now with the pro-life movement of the standard of, is it a killing? Is it a termination? Is it a murder? Now, you are technically terminating a fetus once it is in the womb. Right now, we need to discuss the difference of killing a fetus and a baby. According to the book Thinking Critically About Abortion, the authors Nobis and Grobes actually discuss the importance of talking about the stages of a baby or a fetus in the womb. A lot of pro-life movement folks discuss the term fetus as being cold and disheartening, nothing that's actually full of life. And a lot of people believe that the term of the fetus and the baby life begins at gestation, where in the sense it really doesn't. It is a cell forming with a cell forming with a cell, and up to actually 24 weeks, there's no real sense of life in the baby or in the fetus. I still call it a baby just because it is one, but a fetus is what it is prior to then. There's no signs of life. There's no, quote, fetal consciousness as stated in that book. And we need to discuss that these women and these people, everyone who's saying that pro-life, that yes, it begins at gestation, yes, it does this, it really doesn't. And we need to understand that at that point, we are thinking, well, if I have a miscarriage at that time, is that an abortion? Is that not? That's where it gets into fuzzy, but that's another conversation that needs to be had at a different time. It's the fetal consciousness that we're focusing on, of saying, is this baby, is this fetus actually alive? Is this there? Up to that 24-week mark, it's really not. It is a cell forming in your body. It's almost like an external organ that we're trying to have in our body. And by taking care of it or removing it because of that abortion, it is something that women may need to have. There's the struggle of how we need to discuss of the certain timing. After that 24-week mark, personally, I don't agree with the abortions. I don't agree that they should happen after that mark, but that's because they do show the signs of life. Now, of course, there are issues that are raised with medical issues with abortions that we have to dive into as well, but 89% of abortions are done prior to that 12-week mark, not even 24, 12-week mark. We need to see that. We need to understand that it's not a willy-nilly thing of, oh, they're almost born, I'm going to have an abortion now. That is not the case. After that 89%, the rest of the time, most of it is for medical issues, where you're facing the issues of having a mother and the child unfortunately pass away. Or you have the child pass away and the mother is left very disfigured, dysmorphid. I know somebody who had an abortion, unfortunately, because the baby was dying. It had no brain developed. Very similar to what we've seen through Grey's Anatomy. That's a great example of that one where she didn't have an abortion. She gave the baby with organs, but it's still the matter of saying, oh no, I've had an abortion. I've had this, and my baby could have lived for a moment or it couldn't have lived. And my friend had to deal with that issue. She had to say, I can't have my baby live in pain or just be born to be born. So she did have an abortion, unfortunately for that, and the baby wouldn't have survived outside of the womb at all. And it's very sad to say that, but unfortunately it is a true fact. And the women don't get abortions because they have the means, they have things to survive with this child. It is because of accidental pregnancy, the fear of being a single parent, financial responsibility, not being able to afford a child, for one, and really it is back to that factor of assault and rape. What happens if you have a child and you can't afford it? What happens if you have an accidental pregnancy, say at 16? I have a 16-year-old sister. I can't imagine having a child at 16 years old. What happens if they do that? And then they can't go to college. They can't be a functioning member of society with this. What happens if that's the case? What happens to them? Do they just fall through the cracks of society? Do they just fall with that financial burden themselves? That is something that needs to be discussed, of why they're getting abortions. What can we do to help relieve this situation? First off, we need to have the actual support of clinics such as Planned Parenthood. It is a great example. We are in the process of potentially defunding that. That is another problem. But right now, Planned Parenthood is one of the key resources into getting an abortion. Right now, there was an article published called The Struggles to Save Abortion Care, published by the American Sociological Association, that is wonderful at pointing out the issues of getting access to actually abortion medical care. Right now, on top of it trying to be defunded, we have anti-abortion protesters standing out and being able to say, this is awful, this is terrible, we need to ban all these women, we need to make them scared to be able to go in. Women are losing days being able to wait for these clinics. Providers aren't being trained to perform abortions anymore, and those that are scared that they're going into these clinics to actually be able to do this. They're scared of what's going to happen to them. Are the protesters going to hurt them? Are they going to allow them to go into the building and destroy their clinics? It's a fear. Now, it hasn't happened quite often, but they still stand out those clinics and scare these women into not having abortions because of this. We need to be able to provide a safe space for them to on this. We need to be able to provide this woman saying that, yes, we care. We want you to be safe. We need to be able to understand why they're having these abortions. A great option would be to potentially, I don't want to say teach this in schools, but to have the option to learn about this. We need to publish articles about this. We need to publish facts. We need to make a documentary. We need to understand why they're having these abortions. And hopefully that can actually get across people's minds of, oh, I don't want to kill my baby just because I don't want the baby. I don't want it. It's not there. It's the responsibility. It's the financial burden. There's a lot that goes into raising a child. There are so many steps into going one. My mother was a single mother. She struggled extremely hard. And if it wasn't for finding my dad later in life, we probably still would have struggled. And that was on a dual income. I can't imagine what single mothers do now. And dealing with that, we need to make sure that the pro-lifers, legislators like yourself, see why these women are getting abortions. It's the education section where we need to say, oh, I can be educated in a way to see their point of view. I may not necessarily agree with it full heartedly of saying they should be allowed abortions through their entire pregnancy. I'm not saying that. But this 18-week mark is a healthy place for us to be. We need to see that, and we need to see that is a good spot for us right now. Now, I understand that this may still pass. This may still be there. But looking at the opposite end, where if it does pass, where we are no longer allowed to have abortions here in Utah, we need to understand what we can do to make it so women who don't have abortions get the support. American Enterprise Institute wrote an article called Life After Roe that highlights the issues of what Roe versus Wade has done already to the US or what is going to happen in the US with this. Right now, because of Roe versus Wade, women were allowed to have abortions in almost every state. They were allowed to have that support to be able to have that choice. But now with after that, they have to have their children. What happens to them? They're that single mother, as I said. They are financially unstable. They are not able to handle it because of potential substance abuse issues or abuse issues, such as the sexual assault, as I discussed before. An option would be for the government to provide a tax income credit, potentially, or potentially providing vouchers for healthcare for low-income families. This adds more money to the government, interesting, however. So that's something that you need to consider, where it adds more of a bill to you than it would be to allow these women their choice to have the abortion. Another great one is motherly support. This is something I love. In Finland, particular, they provide a maternity box for women, which I love because they have a support with diapers. They get you a crib, they get you wipes, they get you clothes, everything like this. As well as Greece, they provide up to 43 weeks of paid maternity leave. The maternity leave isn't even acquired in the US. Where does that put us? Now, thinking of those solutions, yes, they're great in theory, but who's going to pay for that? Who's going to actually give that to the support of the mothers? Who's going to make it so they do that? Is this actually a solution? Or is this something that we should consider of saying, oh, maybe we should just have abortions be legal? Might be more cost effective in the long run. Realistically, we're always going to face difficulties with this thought. We're always going to have the pro-life, we're always going to have the anti-abortion movements, but we need to think that women do have their choice. It is their body, it is their choice. We need to understand that they have that. The difficulties we're going to face in the future is, say abortion gets banned, not just in Utah, but what if it gets banned in almost every state or every state? Where does the line get drawn? Is it abortion? Is it birth control pills? Is it not being able to decide if they can have their tubes tied? Right now, women still can't get their tubes tied if they have a partner without their signed consent. Right now, we are facing the issues of women's rights. Where does the line draw that we no longer have a choice? Is it with abortions? Is it not? That's what we need to understand. And I hope that you can see that we need to make abortion legal. We need to understand that this is something that needs to stay here in Utah. And if not, where does that line draw? It is women's bodies. It is their choice. And we should keep it that way for them to decide. Thank you.